been lied to you about Greenland your entire life. On a standard world map, it looks the same size as Africa, yet Africa is 14 times larger. But the size distortion is the least interesting thing about this place. Beneath Greenland's ice sits a hidden canyon longer than the Grand Canyon that no one has ever seen. And when that ice melts, the coastline of every continent on Earth changes. That's fact 1. Greenland is the largest island on Earth. Not a continent, an island. It covers 836,000 square miles, or 2.1 million square kilometers. That's larger than Mexico, larger than the entire Amazon rainforest. And it has a population of just 56,000 people, fewer than a mid-sized American town. The world's biggest island is almost completely empty. That emptiness is also why Greenland keeps producing discoveries. It's so vast and so remote that ground-level survey has barely scratched it. The hidden canyon, the meteorite crater, the ancient mummies, all of them were unknown until satellite imaging and radar penetration made remote sensing possible. The emptiness isn't just a population statistic. It's the reason Greenland is still full of things nobody has found yet. 80% of Greenland's surface is covered by an ice sheet. Not a glacier, a sheet, a permanent continent-wide layer of ice that averages 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers thick. In some places it reaches 2 miles or 3.1 kilometers deep. The ice is so heavy it has pushed the bedrock underneath Greenland below sea level. Remove the ice and much of Greenland wouldn't be land at all. It would be a shallow sea. Let that sink in. Greenland is mostly just a sheet of ice. And this completely breaks logic, because the ice doesn't just sit there. The Greenland ice sheet is so massive it generates its own weather. Cold air rolls off it constantly, creating winds that have nothing to do with what's happening above. Katabatic winds, cold air draining down the ice slopes, can hit 100 miles per hour or 161 kilometers per hour with no storm in sight. Clear skies, calm conditions above, and then a wall of freezing air sweeping across the coast without warning. The ice sheet doesn't just cover Greenland, it controls it. The ice doesn't just control Greenland's weather either. It controls what's recorded inside it, and what happens to the world when it's gone. Both of those facts are coming. Greenland's coastline, including every fjord, inlet, and island, stretches over 27,000 miles, or 43,000 kilometers. That's longer than the circumference of the Earth. The eastern coast alone has fjords that extend 200 miles, or 322 kilometers inland, branching into subfjords, then sub-subfjords, creating a maze of water and rock so complex that sections of it remained unmapped until satellite imaging became available. You could spend a lifetime sailing Greenland's coast and never see the same view twice. But the unmapped coastline isn't just a cartographic gap. The fjords are the exit routes for the glaciers draining the ice sheet. Accurately mapping each one is how scientists model how fast ice loss will deliver meltwater to the ocean. Mapping Greenland's coast is not academic. It's how we calculate how much time coastal cities have. The Ilulissat ice fjord on Greenland's west coast produces more icebergs than almost anywhere on Earth. The glacier feeding it moves up to 130 feet or 40 meters per day, one of the fastest moving glaciers in the world. When sections break off, the icebergs that calve into the fjord can be the size of city blocks. Some are taller than 30-story buildings. They sit in the fjord for months, too large to float out to sea, slowly melting in place. The iceberg that sank the Titanic most likely came from this fjord. But that's nothing compared to this. Beneath the Greenland ice sheet, completely invisible from the surface, runs a canyon stretching over 460 miles or 740 kilometers, longer than the Grand Canyon and in places just as deep. It was discovered in 2013 using radar imaging that penetrated the ice. For millions of years, it sat there completely unknown, buried under a mile of ice. It's one of the longest canyons on Earth. Nobody has ever seen it. Nobody can. It exists in complete darkness, under 2 miles of frozen weight, and will remain hidden for as long as the ice lasts. In 2018, scientists discovered a crater 19 miles or 31 kilometers wide hidden beneath the ice in northwestern Greenland, left by a meteorite strike roughly 800,000 years ago. one of the 25 largest impact craters ever found on Earth. The impact would have instantly vaporized everything in the region and sent debris across the northern hemisphere. Greenland is sitting on top of a scar from one of the most violent collisions in Earth's recent geological history, completely invisible until radar penetrated the ice. But the Greenland ice sheet also recorded that impact. Ice cores drilled from nearby contain the chemical signature of the collision, dust and debris layers preserved in ice that formed within years of the strike. The island is sitting on the scar, and it has a copy of the event filed in its own archive. Halfway through, haven't reached the 800,000-year atmospheric record locked inside the ice, the rate at which that ice is now disappearing, or what 24 feet of sea level rise does to the map of every continent. Stay with me. In northern Greenland, the midnight sun lasts from late April to late August, over 4 months of continuous daylight. At the same time, winter brings polar night, complete darkness, 24 hours a day for months. Not dim, not twilight, completely dark, as if the sun no longer exists. The town of Coastline in northern Greenland experiences 4 months of total night. People who live there describe it as one of the most psychologically extreme environments on Earth. And this is where it gets crazy. People still choose to live there, and have for thousands of years. On the eastern coast of Greenland sits Untold, a set of natural hot springs that stay warm enough to bathe in year-round, even as glaciers calve directly into the surrounding fjord. The water sits around 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius. Around you, icebergs, snow-capped peaks, Arctic silence. You can float in geothermally heated water while watching a glacier break apart 50 yards away. The springs are fed by ancient geothermal activity from the same rift system underlying the North Atlantic, heat escaping through bedrock thin enough to let it through. But as the Greenland ice sheet retreats, the land beneath is rebounding upward, the same post-glacial rebound happening in Norway and Scandinavia. That rebound is actively reshaping the geology that allows the hot springs to exist at all. The most surreal bathing experience on Earth is also one that the melting ice above it is slowly changing. Greenland sits directly under the auroral oval, the ring around the Arctic where the northern lights are most consistently visible. Not occasionally, consistently for months. The displays here are more frequent, more intense, and cover more of the sky than auroras further south. Visible on over 200 nights a year, with almost no light pollution across 836,000 square miles or 2.1 million square kilometers. The lights don't just appear, they dominate the entire sky from horizon to horizon. But the auroral oval isn't just a light show. It marks where the interaction between solar wind and Earth's magnetic field is most intense. The same zone that scientists monitor for geomagnetic storms capable of disrupting GPS, satellite communications, and power grids across Europe and North America. The northern lights that Greenland's residents watch for beauty are the same phenomenon that, at sufficient intensity, can knock out infrastructure across the northern hemisphere. Now here's where it gets interesting and a bit spooky. Geopolitics is a site on Greenland's west coast, where, in 1972, hunters discovered 8 naturally mummified human bodies in a rock crevice preserved by the cold and dry Arctic air for over 500 years. The clothing, tools, and even facial features were intact. One of the bodies was a 6-month-old infant, preserved so perfectly that his eyelashes were still visible. Greenland's climate didn't just preserve them, it froze them in time, so completely that scientists could reconstruct their diet, their health, and their final days in extraordinary detail. Deep inside the Greenland ice sheet, trapped in layers of ice formed over hundreds of thousands of years, is a complete record of Earth's atmosphere going back 800,000 years. Every volcanic eruption, every ice age, every shift in temperature, ancient air bubbles, literally atmosphere from before humans existed, are locked inside the ice. Scientists drill down and pull out cores that contain air from 400,000 years ago. Greenland isn't just covered in ice, it's the Earth's memory, frozen solid and perfectly preserved under a mile of weight. It's a scientist's dream destination for discovery. Hold on, because this one changes how you see the whole island. Itakortormit is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. It sits on Greenland's eastern coast, surrounded by the world's largest national park. The nearest town is 500 miles or 805 kilometers away. There are no roads, no ferry service for most of the year. Supply ships can only reach it a few months when the sea ice breaks up. The rest of the time, the only way in or out is helicopter or dogsled across frozen sea. Around 350 people live there permanently, with a school, a church, and a grocery store, surrounded by complete wilderness for hundreds of miles in every direction. But the frozen sea those dogsled routes cross is retreating. The winter ice corridors that have connected this community to the outside world for generations are becoming shorter and less reliable each decade. The people who survived everything the Arctic threw at them are now adapting to the one thing they didn't plan for: the ice disappearing. I saved this for second to last because it makes the final fact hit differently. Greenland is losing ice faster than at any point in recorded history. In a single day in 2019, it lost 12.5 billion tons of ice, enough to cover the entire state of Florida in 2 inches of water, in one day. The meltwater flows into rivers that pour off the ice sheet in torrents, carving new channels through the ice as they go. The surface of the ice sheet is riddled with bright blue melt pools in summer, lakes forming on top of a glacier, draining through cracks to the bedrock below, lubricating the ice and making it move faster toward the sea. The ice sheet is accelerating its own collapse. 12.5 billion tons in a single day. The ice sheet is accelerating its own collapse. And the number that matters, the one that changes every map on Earth, is next. The Greenland ice sheet contains enough frozen water to raise global sea levels by 24 feet or 7.3 meters. At that level, London, New York, Miami, Shanghai, Mumbai, and Amsterdam would be partially or fully underwater. The map of every continent changes. Hundreds of millions of people would need to relocate. Entire countries, the Maldives, Tuvalu, Marshall Islands, disappear entirely. This isn't a distant hypothetical. The ice is already melting. Scientists currently project it will raise sea levels by several feet within this century alone. And the process, once started, has no off switch. Greenland is the single geographic feature on Earth whose future most directly determines what the world looks like for every person alive today. Greenland is easily the most critical piece of geography on Earth right now. Tell me which facts surprised you the most below, and subscribe for more deep dives into how the world actually works. Catch you in the next one.